Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guys, Mo and Nawara in the Midwest. We've got Nate Weitzer on the East Coast, and we are going to talk about some NBA team win totals here, gentlemen. Probably touch a little bit on some division stuff as well, some of those division winners we like. We did already bring you those conference winners, the NBA championship winners. Also have touched on those MVP odds with you in some previous videos so far to kick off this NBA preseason. Do want to make sure you like and subscribe so you can continue to follow along, get all that great NBA content we are going to be bringing you each and every weekday once that regular season starts, capping those games, picking all of our favorite NBA player props for you as well. So do want to make sure you are following along. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have all of our great content coming at you guys all season long. Also have our great odds finder tool there, so you can go ahead and make sure you are shopping those lines to the best of your ability, as we have done with these NBA team win totals, making sure we're getting the best juice on all of the best possible lines that are being set for all these teams. So let's go ahead and kick things off. Nate, I know to no surprise of most who have watched our show before, you will be talking about the Boston Celtics. It does happen to be your favorite team. Also happens to be the team in the news the most right now, I would say, especially over the course of the last couple of weeks with that Ime Udoka news. So 53.5 on DK. Anything better that you found there, Nate, that you're taking? I'm assuming we're going under?
I'm going way under, to be honest. I mean, confidently under. I mean, it probably will be about 6 wins under, in my opinion. And yes, the Ime Udoka thing is a big question mark with Joe Mazzulla taking over this year. But the bigger deal is Robert Williams going to be out probably 2 months, maybe longer, maybe have complications all season and not really be the same guy. And he was as big of a reason for anything for their ridiculous turnaround in the new year, where they finished 33-10 guys and had 51 wins. And for them to get 54 or even 55, which is what you need at BetGM MGM with that total, it just seems completely unlikely in an improved Eastern Conference. I mean, only 2 teams got to that total last year, and the Suns' ridiculous clutchness and the Grizz, we know what they did. But, I mean, for the Celtics to do this without Rob Williams for most of the year, it's completely unlikely. I mean, Al Horford's 36 now. He's played nearly 36,000 career minutes. I don't know how available he's going to be. Gallo's already out. The reason that their odds spiked, for futures is because they brought in Gallo and Malcolm Brogdon. We know his injury history too. I mean, hasn't come close to a full season the last couple of years. So that could be another reason they drop here. And I mean, I think we're all looking at Philly here to take a step forward, and for Philly to have a win total 3 or 4 less. For Philly, when I glance at the Atlantic Division odds, to be plus 300 to beat out the Nets and Celtics, I really like those odds. We talked about them having the best record in the East, but if you take that, you don't have to mess with Milwaukee or Miami. You just say they're going to beat out those 2 teams. So much higher on Philly coming into this season than the Celtics, with that coaching situation being a wild card that you just throw in addition to the issues I mentioned with the roster.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement there with a number of that stuff. I think it's a bit about the coaching. I do think we like the players that they acquired. Danilo's gone. We, like you said, Malcolm Brogdon, love him as the point guard, as I've mentioned before already. Everybody does. It seems like he was maybe the perfect fit for what they've been missing. The problem is he also doesn't stay healthy, and that's going to be a huge issue for them if that does happen and they're right back to where they were last year with a lack of point guard. What do you make of 53.5 wins for the season? Are you on board with that, Mo?
I think I'm leaning that way with the turmoil in the team, but this is a great roster for sure. It's a team that I'm not looking to fade in the regular season for sure. I just think they're going to bring pretty tremendous defense every night. Those teams usually dominate in the regular season. I guess I'd be worried about the Robert Williams injury, though. He was a huge part of their best lineups last year. They were like plus 5.5 difference with him on the court versus off or something like that, from what I remember. I remember writing about it a bunch last year. He was a material difference maker for them. So I would lean under here also just because I feel like when a team makes the finals, it makes them less likely to take the regular season that seriously the next year. But that's just a feeling. So not every team is going to end up being the same in that sense. I did feel like Udoka did a very good job last year. So I think that's going to make a difference for them as well.
Yeah, big time. Mo, why don't you go ahead and toss us your pick here? I guess, is this the one that you're feeling most favorable about if we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks in that Western Conference?
I would say probably second most, but yeah, I do like. First off, let me just say, my history of betting Dallas Mavericks unders is incredibly poor. Okay.
Disclaimer.
Including last year. Yeah. I loved Mavericks under last year. I thought that this roster was not good at all. I still think that. And now the number is 48 instead of, I don't know. I don't remember what I bet last year. I actually don't remember.
They started out really slow too last year.
I was going to say around 45. Yeah.
Yeah.
This team is worse than last year, though, aren't they? I mean, they lost Brunson, and I'm not like a huge Jalen Brunson guy, but when you don't replace him with anything, I mean, I have so much respect for what Luka and Jason Kidd were able to do last year with a team that I just don't think was very talented. So last year, cleaning the glasses numbers, which strips out garbage time and like uses efficiency numbers to estimate how good the team should have been. They had them as a 50-win team, but this looks like a worse talent level team than that. And I mean, they're the most frail team maybe in the NBA in terms of like how much one injury could impact them. I mean, God forbid if something happens to Luka, this becomes like a 25-30 win team. The big thing for me that really stood out last year that I just don't know how they can repeat it. This was a top 10 defense. It was top 5 for most of the year. They finished 8th by cleaning the glasses efficiency numbers. I mean, you look at this roster, I don't have any idea how this could be a top 5 defense. I just don't see it. And when I'm looking at the rosters in the West, I see at least 5 teams that are clearly better, that the market sees as better, and I'm agreeing with them, which is Golden State, Clippers, Nuggets, Memphis, and I think there was one more.
Minnesota right now, I think.
Minnesota has a higher win total. I think it's close between those two. And then I even think Pelicans, Lakers, Portland, these teams are all close. I mean, 6th place team in the West. Oh, Phoenix was the other one. 6th place team in the West. I was looking back past few years. It's averaging around 46 wins. And that's in some of the years when the West was incredible. And 6th place team was like 49 wins. So they're not getting past this number most likely if they're the 6th seed, which is basically what the market expects. And I don't know if they're even that good. I'm ready for Luka to just beat me over the head again, but I'm just going to have to pay for it, man, because this is not a good roster.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about this Mavs team, but I fully agree that this is not as good of a roster. I think Christian Wood is a guy who's maybe that's part of the reason that we're all feeling good. He's the only addition. And then, like you were talking about, they didn't really get better and they got worse. If you're playing Spencer Dinwiddie more, who came on at the end for sure, but he came on in a role where he was not opposite Luka. He was in the second quarter unit, right? So Jalen Brunson's the guy who proved that he could play alongside Luka, be a guy to get his own shot and just do your turn, my turn, and feel really good about it. Plus hit the open jumper and really create space by being quicker than everybody. So I fully agree. I don't know how he'll fit on those New York Knicks, to be honest with you, because there's nothing around him to work with, in my opinion. But there was plenty there for him in Dallas, and I do agree they got completely worse. I don't know what Christian Wood gives you on defense that you really like. He's really just an empty stats guy when it comes to stretching the floor, getting rebounds, a lot of offensive rebounds, which is nice, and it's something that the Mavs have done well historically the last couple seasons. But at this point, no Boban's gone. I know that doesn't sound like much, but that was a big second quarter rebounder for you. And now, maybe you have Christian Wood coming off the bench and you keep DFS at that power forward, Dorian Finney-Smith, and bring Christian Wood off the bench. There's things that kid can do. I think we do know he's a great defensive coach at this point, and he's turned, basically shit into something that smells a little bit better on defense with this team, and the ability to get them into the playoffs and even give teams, obviously, like the Phoenix Suns a run for their money in the playoffs. It's not the same team anymore, and I do agree that at a 6th or 7th seed in the West, you're not looking at more than 45, 46 wins, and this is a little bit high for them. So I would agree on the under there. But I am going to finish off the first round of teams we're talking about here with my favorite, which is Philly, and Philly is a team that. We talked about this earlier. I'm not picking them to win the championship. I'm not picking them to do much in the playoffs. It's James Harden, Joel Embiid. One guy doesn't perform in the playoffs. The other guy barely can play in the playoffs and is already hobbled by the time he gets there from playing the 34 minutes a game that he played last year in the most games he's ever played at 68 games in the season. So there's not much reason to feel great about the playoffs, but this might be the best roster in the NBA at this point, both from a starting lineup standpoint and a bench standpoint. And I think a huge reason for that is going to be Tyrese Maxey, who just went bananas last year. Probably should have been the most improved player, but that's such a murky, weird, abstract award in the first place that I'm not too worried about it, and probably won't be betting it. But Maxey's improvement from last year, he played in 14 more games. He started 74 of them. So he turned into a starter and a guy that you considered their second or third scorer, depending on if James Harden is even playing that night. So then you've got, his increase in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, everything just skyrocketed through the roof, way better player. And the impact that he had was obvious. So I think another step forward for him, even a slight one. And I do think he has that. Now we're talking about 3 firepower offensive players on your squad. They added to the defense. They just made themselves, like I said, probably the best roster in the league by adding PJ Tucker, Montrezl Harrell, DeAnthony Melton. Those 3 great defensive players. Well, I'm sorry, 2 great defensive players in Montrezl Harrell, who at least, attacks the boards for you.
You be careful. Montrezl Harrell can't get on the floor in the playoffs. All right.
Exactly. No, I'm sort of tweaking what I'm saying about him. I'm really putting DeAnthony Melton and PJ Tucker into that category of very big time players, guys that give them more depth. This is all about the regular season. 50.5 wins for them right now feels really, really good after they, basically got that last season. I do think Joel stays healthy during the regular season. There's another opportunity for potentially him to be the leading scorer at the end of the season right now. He is the favorite. Not too bad of a bet, in my opinion, to be honest. So I think there's just too much to like with Philly to ignore the fact that they could win 55 games this season. Nate talked about it. They're the reason that I don't like the Celtics win total or the Celtics to win the division. That I do like them to win the division. I'm not picking them to come out of anything past 82 regular season games. That's where I stop betting on the Philadelphia 76ers, at least.
Yeah, we're not talking about playoffs here. We're talking about a deep regular season team, to the point that I think even if they deal with an Embiid or Harden injury for 20 plus games, they can keep churning out wins. You look at the depth and the versatility of what they can do with the bench unit now. They can put Tybal on different guys, DeAnthony Melton, an injection of energy there. Yeah, I'm on the record saying how much I love the Sixers for some regular season bets. I'm on the record saying I think James Harden is going to bounce back and be a very productive regular season player. And we just have to keep prefacing everything we say about this team with regular season. And just to backtrack to the Mavs thing, I mean, that is really, I think they'll be right on that total, to be honest. I think it's pretty scary, and but it hinges completely on a key injury or two, because what they did is they sacrificed any sort of insurance policy by letting Brunson go. If everyone's healthy on this team, though, I think there is a little too much of snubbing in terms of what they are able to continue to do defensively. Maybe they don't seem like defensive monsters, but DFS and Reggie Bullock are the perfect kind of wing defenders you need in this league. You saw how much that worked in the playoffs. And I think it can roll over the way we have, been forced to eat so much crow about Jason Kidd, Josh, the way they started slowly under him. And now they have it kind of fine tuned, and Luka looks better. Luka is a monster, of course, the MVP front runner. So I'm not totally in on the under there, but if you bet it and then you get an injury to somebody like Luka, Wood, DFS even, I think you could be in good shape there.
Yeah, Nate, we're gonna be careful with our Jason Kidd slander. We were just firing torpedoes at him at the beginning of last season. He was just getting run over on pretty much every one of our conversations. We found a way to trash Jason Kidd in there, even if we weren't talking about the Mavs. And that was right for about 20 games, and then it was very, very wrong, and they looked pretty good. So either way, I do think that this is still too high of a win total for them. But let's move on to your next team here, Nate, as I know you feel pretty good about this Memphis team. I feel really good about 48.5 wins for them over on that total. I mean, they didn't really get worse. Anthony Melton didn't get that much time. He was probably their biggest departure. Slow-mo, Kyle Anderson, also not on the team anymore. You do worry about Jaren Jackson Jr. staying healthy. I think you just slot him in for 45, 50 games, and you still consider this team capable of winning, like 49, 50 games? That seems like it's a pretty easy bet. What's your take there?
Yeah, you probably are going to get them at 49.5 at most books, but DraftKings is giving you 48.5. Slight plus odds on them to win the division, which isn't great. And yeah, I mean, you talk about who they lost in the offseason. Well, they also get Dylan Brooks back, who only played 30 games last year and had, I think, one of the best plus-minus ratings of anybody on that team. You know, obviously some wonky stats in terms of who was in and out and how well they performed because, of course, they went 20-2 without Ja, then lost their last 3 without him in sort of irrelevant terms. But yeah, I mean, they topped this by 7 wins last year. JJJ is going to be out, it looks like, about a month, but they have so much front court depth that I think they can easily weather that storm, easier than weathering the storm without Ja. They still have Tyus Jones, one of the best backup point guards you can find. And the West is, in general, just kind of declining, especially at the top. I mean, Memphis was one of the best teams in every category you could find there. They just stick with their continuity here. With the core of their roster. Ja is just going to continue to get better and be a bigger problem for defenses. And just the attitude, the coaching Taylor Jenkins brings, I have no problem banking on them with it, regardless of injuries, to get over that 50-win mark again.
What say you, Mo, about these Memphis Grizzlies?
Love Ja. Pretty fair line, I think, but yeah, I think it's always dangerous to like keep projecting improvement. I don't know how much better Ja is going to get. He's already extremely good. I think they probably need Jaren Jackson in there if they're going to come close to their ceiling. I'm a little bit interested in, honestly, in that. I'm a little bit interested in the Pelicans plus 400. I mean, plus 400? Their win total is like 4 or 5 lower than Memphis. That seems. I know that they have like a lower floor, but that's what makes me want to bet like a longer shot like this, is that rather than like their win total, because I know that if Zion doesn't play, whatever else happens, they're not going to be close to winning the division, right? But their ceiling is probably pretty close to wherever Memphis is going to finish. They have the talent for sure. Yeah, I just think the market kind of knows how good Memphis is. So I guess I'm not that interested either way, but I was wondering about Pelicans to win that division. I definitely, going back a little bit to what you guys were talking about with Philly, I think I'm seeing some plus 300s or higher. That seems way too high for Philly to win that division. The win total difference is like 1 or 2 compared to them, and they're right there with them. Why are the Nets shorter than them? I don't understand.
I don't have a reason there for you either. And I guess the Philly thing, I'm really honestly just ignoring all of the distractions and going, I know what I know about this team, and I know what I don't know about the other teams. Celtics now have question marks. Nets are they should be the Brooklyn question marks. And after that, right, like Toronto is a sneaky team. I do agree. They played a lot better coming on last season, but they're also wildly inconsistent. I think there's too many opportunities for a player or two on their team to get hurt, and then their whole system is definitely in a funk as they kind of need that strength in numbers kind of style. But for Memphis, I think the only thing that scares me about the win total is how good are the Pellies and how much better did teams like the Lakers and the Kings, maybe the Blazers, and we know that the Timberwolves got better. So there's like 5 or 6 teams right there that you don't feel like Memphis comes in and that's just a win for them, right? And they did beat a lot of the good teams last year, and they were the good team that never lost to the bad team last year. If you look at their record against teams under 500 as opposed to above, they came to bring it no matter who they were playing. To your point, even though it's not like a championship loss hangover for them the way it might be for the Celtics, there could still be that level of like they peaked early, they arrived early, and do they still come back with that same hunger? I would bet yes. I would bet that they still come back and are able to get 50 wins just based on the fact that John Morant does actually have a little bit of room to grow, and that's in his shooting. And if his shooting expands and he starts to become somebody that you have to guard out there, good luck, right? At that point, good luck. Now you're talking about putting him in the echelon of that top 5 in the NBA, despite his inability necessarily to guard on the other end as well. But let's move on to your next pick here, Mo. Not necessarily the sexiest one, but I do think there's something to be said for the Indiana Pacers being shortchanged at this point after losing Malcolm Brogdon. They still have Miles Turner. I don't know that he's going anywhere at this point. So 23.5 wins for this team. Buddy Hield's on the team. They've got, the Tyrese Halliburton as well. Is that what I'm banking on here for getting 24 wins this season?
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see the Pacers considered to be like absolute stone bottom tier team, as bad as anybody. When you look at this team's results last year, so Cleaning the Glass has it. They have this as a 32 win team last year. So it's pretty hard to lose 10 wins in the NBA without losing a superstar, okay? So they definitely did not do that. They obviously traded away Sabonis. But it's like you said, I think that means Turner's sticking around. And if Turner's sticking around, I think they want to see how he functions for like a full season in an environment without Sabonis where he's kind of the only big man. So I do think they're going to have a reasonable core out there. I mean, Halliburton, Hield, Chris Duarte, and Miles Turner is a reasonable 4 players to put out there that are going to give you a chance every night. And
I would also throw in O'Shea Brissett in there. You might see him either in the starting lineup or definitely as a solid 6th man, right?
Yeah, so that's the thing I was going to say. The depth isn't the worst either. Brissett, Isaiah Jackson was coming on. I don't exactly how you know how you pronounce his name.
Isaiah Jackson coming on a little bit. We'll see what they get from Aaron Nesmith if he can turn things around. Not feeling great about it. They also have Daniel Tice, Jalen Smith, and my favorite, Goga Bitadze.
Well, I was going more Benedict Mathurin. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but the rookie they drafted, he was having a good summer league. TJ McConnell's a very good backup point guard. This team has reasonable depth, and key factor for me here is a good coach. We have a good coach here. Carlisle, Halliburton, this combination to me gives them a reasonable floor. They're going to be scoring enough points, I think, to be giving teams a game every night. And Halliburton's exactly the type of point guard, like really heady, smart guy that Carlisle loves to coach. So I think there's going to be a nice synergy there. And just, I've learned over the years betting on Rick Carlisle in the regular season, he can make any ingredients you give him into a great chicken salad. That's just how good of a coach he is. So 23.5 is so low, man. I mean, they do not have to be a good team to surpass this.
And from an organizational standpoint, they're not going to tank. Like, Indiana is a classic middle swimming team. And the offense wasn't bad at all once they got Halliburton in there. They were just I didn't think they were the worst defensive rating down the stretch, but that's because Miles Turner didn't play the entire rest of the season, right? I mean, they had rotten injury luck all year with Brogdon, McConnell out. They just couldn't get any cohesion on defense, and now they're getting a little older in terms of those young guys who are playing on the wing. Like the rookie you mentioned there as well. So, I think they'll be a pretty solid 2A team, and I think it's easy to project at least 24 wins. The total does seem too low to me.
Yeah, and I think the key here, too, is a little bit of what we're talking about, what you just started with, Nate. Who's going to tank for these teams? And if you look at the teams predicted to not win in that Webinaya sort of sweepstakes here, you're talking about Spurs, Rockets, Thunder, Jazz, Magic, Pistons. I'd throw the Wizards and Hornets in there as teams that could potentially start tanking at some point as well. Although I would say that's a lot less likely for those two teams. The Wizards I could see tanking as well. Point being that I think there's plenty of teams here that will start trying to lose. I don't think the Pistons and Magic start trying to lose, to be honest. But I think there's 5 or 6 teams out of the roughly 8 that I just gave you that are going to try to tank. And one of them is not the Indiana Pacers, whose win total is all the way down at 23.5 as the 3rd, 4th worst in the NBA right now on most betting sites. So I think you can expect them to do a little bit better than the expectation. at least based on the fact that they're going to try 10 more games than those other teams I just mentioned are going to be trying as well. So one team I'll move us on to real quick that's not going to be tanking, I don't think, 33.5 wins for the Sacramento Kings, which is a team that everybody wants to talk about right now. They are a fun pick as somebody that might exceed expectations this season. And I mean, look, the roster, what I care about with the Kings is who's going to end the game, who's going to be there in crunch time. They have the opportunity with Fox, Herter, Barnes, Keegan Murray looked really good, best rookie in summer league, and Domantas Sabonis in that starting lineup. What that does is give you a lot of talent. It also gives you Malik Monk, Trey Lyles, Rashawn Holmes, Davion Mitchell, and Terrence Davis on your bench. So that's a very good bench. What I want to know is who's on the floor at the end of the game. Is that starting lineup on the floor? Can Keegan Murray stay in crunch time, or do they need to bring in a Malik Monk and go a lot smaller with Harrison Barnes at the 4? What does that do for your defense if Domantas Sabonis is your starting center? At the end of the day, 33.5 wins, and Mike Brown is your head coach right now, who is a defensive-minded guy, and I do think will be able to bring that to the table a lot more than Luke Walton ever would have been able to. I think 33.5 wins makes a lot of sense. There's been some regression in this Western Conference, as we talk about, the Phoenix Suns being one of those teams right there in their own division, that I think that they can take advantage of some of this stuff. And I'm super down on the Lakers, who we're about to talk about, and think that, once again, the little brother Kings can give some of these teams trouble, like the Lakers, like the Suns, and these other teams in the West. Am I crazy?
I'm going to say you're not. I think there's enough scoring here with De'Aaron Fox. Once again, we're talking about point guards who give you scoring floor every night. De'Aaron Fox is one of those guys. Like, your offense is not going to be horrible ever with De'Aaron Fox on the floor, and that gives you some floor. I do think this is a reasonable roster. It again looks like a decent roster with a solid starting 5. My issue with the Kings, the only thing that's really scaring me here, because I definitely looked at this over as well, is the division they play in. I'm not sure exactly how the NBA schedules break down, but they play in the division with Lakers, Clippers, Suns, Warriors. So every single one of those teams has playoff aspirations. Every single one of those teams expects to win, 45 plus games. Every single one of those teams has a 0% chance of tanking. Every single one of those teams is going to try to add talent, if anything, during the season. So I could see the Kings having a very difficult schedule as far as regular season schedule goes. I don't know how much that matters because I don't know exactly how the NBA schedule breaks down, but it could give them a few extra losses.
They do you play everyone in your conference 4 times, so it's not like they have more against those guys, but there are some travel issues when you're in Sacramento, and then you have to go on that long road trip out east, and when you are home, you're facing those types of teams. So I think there is something to what you're saying there in terms of the proximity. Yeah,
it's a scary pick. At the end of the day, all I have to say is Kings over, and everyone's going, I don't know about all that. So history's not on our side here. I'm getting ahead of the curve a little bit. I do think we're going to see some regression, as I said, but that is got to be consistently the best division in basketball right now, which does make it a bit more of a stay away and one that I'm not absolutely in love with. But I did want to at least mention the Kings in here. Let's get on to a team we should have probably kicked things off with, because there's a lot of dissent here and a lot to talk about with the Los Angeles Lakers. I hate them. I hate the Los Angeles Lakers, not just the franchise. I don't care about any of this fandom stuff. I do not want to bet on them to win ever. I understand. I kind of felt that way before the season that they won the championship. Obviously, they probably got helped a little bit by that bubble. I'm not going into that. Point being, I still hate them. And any team with Russell Westbrook on it, if it's not a team that needs him to average a triple-double just to get to 36 wins a la the Wizards a few years ago, then he's going to be a detriment to the team, period, bottom line. He needed to at least move to another team where he wasn't going to be that level of detriment to them, but he's still there. AD got hurt. There was a really funny tweet that he had a chip on his shoulder this season. Somebody quote tweeted it and said, Anthony Davis out 4 to 6 weeks with a chip on his shoulder. So I think we could probably expect some more of that this season. They are at 48.5 wins, which is the lowest total they've had since LeBron came to the team. Nate, go ahead. Tell me why I'm totally off base here with an under for this Lakers team win total.
I don't think you're totally off base. I think 44.5, where the win total is right on the border of where they're going to wind up. I just think there is a turnaround coming here. New coach, Patrick Beverley, as much as his actual talent level isn't a huge difference maker, I think the difference in holding guys accountable and the intensity that you're going to see. And I also think it's hilarious that Anthony Davis, that joke you mentioned, I was going to lead with that, but there is something to that as long as he does stay healthy, people talk about a revenge tour for him, for this entire team. With LeBron and AD, this team is 75-33. That's nearly 70% win rate. And you can throw out all sorts of supporting cast alongside them, and it's really those two guys will win games for you if they're healthy. The bench gets a little bit better, at least in terms of being able to sustain production. Kendrick Nunn's going to be active this year. They got Lonnie Walker. They got Schroeder. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Russ here in terms of, will he lead that bench unit? Will he just take a ride on the bench for a while entirely and wait for a trade? But I think that, it's a revenge tour for him too, if he can swallow some pride and play a role here. You're looking at them minus 250-ish to make the playoffs, according to most books. And I think they're going to have to be around 44 wins to do that. And I think if those two guys I mentioned stay healthy, that they will get there and sort of, put some of this bad mouthing to bed a little bit by at least being in the, maybe reaching out of the play-in tournament and getting one of that 5 or 6 seed.
Well, I want to hear what you have to say, Mo, but I'm going to be honest. When you said 75-33 there, Nate, for those two guys together, what I heard is they played 108 games in 3 seasons. That's all that I really heard when you said that. And that when they play together, they could be the best team in basketball per their championship. Talk to me, Mo. I mean, this is a decent bench. He's not wrong. Juan Toscano Anderson, Austin Reeves, Kendrick Nunn, Pat Bev, and Damian Jones gives you a nice second 5. What does that do for you for the Lakers in that win total?
I think they did a good job grabbing some cast off pieces that fit here. I kind of thought that last year though, and then Kendrick Nunn just didn't play. So I would say I have no idea what to do with the Lakers, but what that means to me is, I agree with you, Josh. When I could see anything happening, and what that means to me is, bet an alternate number here. If everything comes together, yeah, this is going to be a 50-win team, but I could also see everything just going completely wrong and then winning 35 games and LeBron checking out again. The range of outcomes is so wide here that I would much rather bet any kind of alternate number than the regular number.
Well, then I'll hold you to. Which alternate would you take? Which way are you alternating this line?
I think if I had to pick, I'd pick under, but it makes me sick betting against LeBron. So I don't know. I don't know that I could put a single dollar on it.
Well, like I said, this is the most dissension, probably not just between the three of us on this podcast, but also for most people who are talking about the Lakers this season. There's the same level of dissension because it's really just, as you said, it's going to come down to, are these two guys playing? If not, maybe this is the Washington Wizards. If both of them get hurt, then we do have the Wizards of a couple years ago with Russell Westbrook running with Thomas Bryant once again and a guy like Dennis Schroeder and company. So I do think that without those two guys, they are a 30-win team. With those two guys, yeah, they could be a 50-win team. The only thing I would also say aside from injury is Russell Westbrook is a net negative to your basketball team, period. He could be the 30th best player in the league right now, skills-wise, talent-wise, still a net negative to your team when he gets on the floor because of the way that he impacts it, in my opinion.
We also have no idea what a Darvin Ham is going to do as a coach. I mean, this is another one where it's just maybe he's the best coach in the league, or maybe he's just some guy they plugged in and just brings nothing to the table. We don't know.
Can't be worse. Can't be worse.
Can't be worse, and hopefully won't get run out of town just the way Frank Vogel did, probably unreasonably so. But we'll see what happens. If LeBron turns on him, he's gone. So I think that's really what his job A1 is right now, is make LeBron happy. Obviously, you want to get some wins in there. Don't really need to worry about how happy everybody else is, to be honest. But let's finish things up here with a last couple picks, guys. Mo, I know you're going under on the Jazz. I'm going under on the Clippers. Let's start with you and that Jazz under at about 25.5 wins. Colin Sexton's their best player now, right? So what does that mean for this team?
I think that means they're going to be extremely bad. Colin Sexton being option one, when you look at that compared to some of these other teams, at the bottom, Oklahoma City has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he's far better at basketball than Colin Sexton. Will he be on the floor? I don't know. But if he is on the floor, he's way better than Colin Sexton. Houston has a bunch of interesting young pieces highlighted by Jalen Green. I mean, this guy was dropping 30 a night to end the season last year. I think they have some upside, at least. I think anyone could say that that's true. Even if you're down on Houston, there's definitely some upside there. Pacers, I've already talked about Halliburton. I don't see 1 ounce of upside in the Jazz. The Spurs are the only team that I'm like, okay, this roster might be worse than the Jazz. They have a 22 win total. The Jazz there's a 25.5 out there. I mean, every year in the NBA, there is somebody that's going to win like sub 20 games or 20 games. I mean, this happens every year. The Jazz just look like the most likely one to me this year. I know that they still have some solid veterans on the team, but I don't think these guys are going to be on the team. It wouldn't even surprise me if they weren't on the team by the calendar turning. Jordan Clarkson, he's not necessarily, I mean, he's made some strides, but that dude's going to be a looter and a riot if he's left out there. And I just see like him and Colin Sexton just fighting over shots probably. Mike Conley is going to be just like the veteran who's just stuck here. I don't know what he's going to be doing there. He's going to be disgusted. He belongs on a playoff team for sure. I know that he sucked in the playoffs last year, but he should at least be a backup point guard on a playoff team. I mean, he doesn't belong here, and he's going to get traded, I think. I know that he's tough to trade, though. But I mean, man, I think even Lauri Markkanen, I don't even know if he's going to be around. It's not like he's just like a prospect, rookie, second year, whatever. He's been around 3-4 years now, so I don't really see them hanging on to these pieces if they can get an ounce of value out of them. It's very obvious what the front office wants, which is to draft in the top 3. So I think when you have a situation like that, they're going to do everything they can to bottom out. And this coach that they just hired, I've never heard of him. I imagine they discussed this with him when they hired him. Will Hardy, I think he's going to be on board with the tank show, man. So, I mean, I honestly think the Jazz win like 20 games, 18, 19, 20 games. This team is atrocious. The only thing that even remotely scares me is it's a really tough place to play. So they do have a good home court, which is usually really good for these season bets.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this, though. I've been waiting to fade the Jazz. I just feel like they've been an imposter for years now. And I've just, like I said, been waiting for this. So this is an amalgamation of a few talented veterans who are at best, I don't know, tier 4, tier 3 players, depending on how you want to break things up. But like, we're not talking about any bona fide starters. We're talking about veterans past their prime. Honestly, Walker Kessler, big fan. I think their rookie, their 22nd overall pick that they got from the Timberwolves, that's a guy that I would actually like a lot if you were on a bit of a better team. But I think his stats will be there because of the fact that they're going to be so bad and they're going to be happy to play a guy like him. So let's finish things off.
Starting? Like, if he's just starting, isn't that just I mean, what? Rookie, just throwing him in as the anchor of your defense. Good luck.
That's what
they want, though.
Yeah. And hopefully that he that doesn't ruin his career by just taking away any confidence he might have by being in there too early, which often happens, especially with guys of his size. But look, he's still going to be fine. There's nobody else that they're really going to worry about. He knows they're not going to win this year. So it's really all about him taking on the team. But let's finish things up, guys, with the Clips. They are a bit more interesting anyway than the Jazz, to be honest. And I'm still going under, though. And I know it's not quite as interesting, but this comes down to what we talked about, which is Mo likes this team once they get to the playoffs. Nobody likes them before they get to the playoffs because you don't know how many games Kawhi is going to play coming back from injury. You don't know how many games Paul George is going to play constantly being injured. And then after that, look, it's a good roster in a lot of ways, but it's not a top 3 team in the NBA if they don't have both of their wing stars out there. And so their win total sits at 52.5, right? Just only below the Celtics basically on most books. And even with the Bucks about that, the Bucks are a much better regular season team than this Clippers. I think they're a better team in general. I think Giannis is the best player in the NBA at this point. But at the same time, like, look, the Clips, 52.5 wins, way too many. I think there's been too many big losses, too many guys that can get injured and have been injured for me to feel any kind of way about them.
Yeah, they're like the other LAC team, the Chargers, right? I mean, there's something's going to come up where they just aren't as good as expectations. I mean, they might look like world beaters on paper, and I don't think anybody's expecting Kawhi Leonard to come out and go hard all season as he comes off, especially as he comes off an ACL tear. I mean, he's had just load management issues for years where he's just like, I'm not going to go that hard. I'm not going to set a real tone for this team. We're going to win 48-ish games. That's cool. Maybe we're going to tank at the end of the season for our preferred playoff matchup or something. Like I feel very confident projecting them for the 45 to 50 win range here. I think they'll be a good team, but I think there's no way they're getting to 53.
100% love the LAC comparison. Biggest difference that scares me, though, is Ty Lue is way better than Brandon Staley, in my opinion. And so Brandon Staley's not long for that tenure job. Ty Lue, at the same time, he's a playoff. He's a situational coach. He knows how to really, refute what the other team does really well, which is much more impactful in a 7-game series than a random Wednesday night where he's playing the Thunder and maybe his coaching scheme isn't really like trying to outdo anybody at that point, right? So I still think Ty Lue's benefit to the team and value really comes in the playoffs as really opposed to the regular season anyway. So once again, all these regular season bets we should feel really, really good about. Plenty of stuff to talk about, but that is all the time that we have for you on this one. Hope you got plenty out of all of these team win totals that we're talking about in the NBA coming up this season. Definitely want to make sure you're liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us once that regular season starts. We're bringing you videos each and every weekday, including those player props. And up until then, we are also going to probably have a few more futures for you. We'll see what this exhibition games bring for us and how much we like to talk about. But until we see you next, happy betting.